Good evening. Yeah, so it's quite something to be here after such a week, right? With here in the Bay Area, with the fires. Seems like it's a little bit better now, and I know the air quality is better now. All of us are, I don't know if all of us are, but so many of us are keeping an eye on the air quality. So I see that it's getting better, and so that's a good sign, going in the right direction. So we can just spend a little time getting settled, getting quieted. I like this expression, arriving, because I'm often feeling like I need to arrive sometimes. Like I'm not, like maybe little, it sounds kind of odd to say, right? But maybe like little fragments are left behind where I just was or something. So a warm welcome to everybody, whether you're affected by these fires or not. And taking a little time with the posture, feeling the seat, feeling the body connected to the cushion, and feeling what it's like to be here now. So we can feel the pressure of the chair cushion against the body. Feel the feet and how they're connected to the ground. And feel whatever the hands are touching. And noticing whether it's warm or cool, smooth or rough. And maybe feel more globally with the body. What does it feel like right now? There might be some areas of tension or tightness. And if so, just bring your awareness to those areas in a kind-hearted, open way. Not that we have to get rid of them, but maybe to invite them in some kind of way. Yes, you too. This area of tension, maybe a little bit of areas of tightness or some discomfort. Of course, we don't want to sit in a way that is uncomfortable and unhealthy for our bodies. But sometimes that's just the way it is. There's some tightness or tension. And it might be with some warm-hearted attention, the tightness might soften up a bit. And then can we give our attention to the sensations of breathing right now? In that same open, kind-hearted way. To offer our attention, to give our attention to the sensations of breathing. I feel that in the chest or the belly, or maybe the air going in and out of the nose. When we find ourselves lost in thought, just very simply, gently begin again. With the sensations of breathing. What would it be like to not be stingy, so to speak, with our attention, but instead to freely offer, freely give our attention to this present moment? Not holding back, not feeling like we have to keep some of our attention back just in case we need it the next moment, but instead Just giving all of our attention to this moment. Again, what would it feel like to just give yourself over to being aware of the sensations of breathing? It's interesting we use this word give. Give yourself over. Might there be a way in which there is the open-heartedness of generosity that supports your being with this moment? In some ways, giving might be like a gift. With the lightheartedness and delight that often accompanies gifts. Is there a way in which we might consider our being with our experience to be an offering, not only to ourselves, but to others? Our being wholeheartedly present and practicing how to be present. Not only during our meditation, but also so that we can be present for others. So that our practice might support them. Our holding the space for them to show up, for them to feel safe in. In some ways it's a gift of safety, gift of being seen and heard. And then to end this meditation, you can feel your feet on the ground, and feel the pressure of the chair or cushion against the body. And when you're ready, you can gently open the eyes. So welcome. Really warm welcome to everybody. It's a delight to be here. Somehow I feel a little bit more present after that sit. Hopefully you do too. Hopefully feel a little bit more collected or grounded and in some kind of way. So I'd like to build on just a little bit of the talk that Gil gave yesterday. He gave a talk in response to all these incredible fires we have going on here. Yeah, it's quite something to have. Not only is there, of course, just the knowledge that places I've seen, some place really dear to me, Big Basin. I think it's a state park or a national park, I'm not sure. Beautiful, beautiful place that the headquarters burned down, and just, feeling the heartbreak of that. And some of those beautiful, magnificent trees, and not to say all the families who have had to evacuate and lost their homes. It's quite something. So with some heavy-heartedness, recognizing what's happening right now. And for those of you in the Bay Area, know that it's not only like news, but we experience it with the ash falling from the sky and the air quality being so poor. And Gil talked about this a little bit yesterday with the theme of do what you can. Do what you can. So I'd like to just build on this a little bit and come from a different area, but this idea that, how can we show up and make a difference and support not only ourselves, of course, but others? There are so many others that are in need. It's not the fires here in the Bay Area. There's certainly fires further north and in Southern California and all the other things that are happening right now. And I'd like to link this idea of do what you can with kind of the movement of the heart or the movement of the mind. That is this kind of leaning forward in some kind of way, this openness, this generosity, this engagement that's the opposite of like grabbing or clinging or stinginess, kind of the opposite movement of that. And I'm reminded that quite a few years ago, right after IRC opened, that there was a time when I was doing a lot of retreat practice, and for me, there was it's a kind of a big deal to go on retreat. At least for me, it was certainly then, and I would spend a lot of time planning exactly what I'm going to bring, because you don't want to bring too much, because it then just clutters up your room and clutters up your mind. You want to keep things simple while you're on retreat, but you don't want to bring too little so that you feel like you don't have what you need or that you feel deprived in some kind of way. Just kind of like the minimum amount to have some comfort and some ease and to have, belongings in your stuff just not be an issue. So I used to, think about this days before, okay, what am I going to bring? And then one time I was on retreat down at IRC and I ran out of dental floss. Right, it's hard to tell in those little containers how much more is in there and how much do you use in a week or 2 weeks? So I knew that there was this, what's called a yogi needs closet. That is a closet where they would, there's some things there that some toiletries and stuff, if you run out or you forgot to bring them, or you could go to this closet. I thought, okay, I'll just go down there and get some more dental floss. And I opened up the closet and I found myself staring at the contents of the closet and my heart kind of welling up with the generosity of IRC, of everything that a person might need was there. Not only was there dental floss, but maybe toothpaste and a toothbrush just in case you forgot it, but Band-Aids and some over-the-counter medicine for your belly if you're having some trouble, or some aspirin, or heating pads if you're having some discomfort while sitting, some cough drops, some soap, razors, all kinds of things just freely offered. You just go to the closet. And this feeling that I had, I'm bringing it to mind, I can still feel it, of the respect and the care and this wish for to support my practice. That IRC is freely providing all these things to support one's practice. And some of the thoughts that I had, of course, is like, oh, I want to support an organization like this. Just like I'm being supported in this particular way, I want to be supported. I want to give support, having been supported. And some of you have seen there, I think sometimes in the newsletter that goes out, there's a little saying that something about that Dharma unfolding in a field of generosity. And I think that's what's being pointed to here, this idea of a field of generosity. That is this movement of, I'm kind of doing, opening my hands, this movement of letting go, this non-stinginess. It's not grasping and holding on, but instead offering and giving with respect and with care. Not because that, I feel sorry for you, here, let me give this to you. But like, this might support you. It might not, also it might, but if you find it will be helpful, you're welcome to it. This gesture of the heart. So in this way, there's this idea of, we could think of generosity as a sense of openness. I like this expression, non-stinginess, because stinginess implies a real tightness, right? A kind of a holding on, grasping for dear life kind of a sensation or experience. We could also define generosity as a type of sharing. Generosity doesn't mean that we have to give 100% of what we own, therefore we don't have anything left. But maybe it's sharing. And somehow that kind of makes my heart sing also. This idea of sharing. We all learned this back in kindergarten. So this is the role of generosity in Buddhist practice. It actually is foundational to the practice, but part of the role is just to help create the conditions in which there is this sense of delight, in which there is this sense of happiness. When we share, when we stop being stingy, there's this openness, as well as just this. It also points specifically to letting go. And you might say that the entire Buddhist practice, all the way, the path to freedom, to awakening, as well as the path to just greater well-being, all involves letting go. So generosity is just one particular movement, or maybe one particular flavor of that letting go. And the Buddha talked about this a lot, actually. That being generous brings happiness, that it brings a sense of delight. And think of when you bring a gift to somebody, and how that's this feeling of, if it's wrapped, opening up the gift, or even if it's not wrapped, of course, just the feeling that you have of, yes, I thought about you, and there's a little bit less self-centeredness for me, I'd like to offer this to you. So in this way, generosity is not a business transaction. It's not in which I give and I expect to receive something of equal or greater value in return, or we're not trying to get a profit out of this gesture. Instead, it's this feeling of open-heartedness, of sharing. And this recognition that everything that we do, everything, all of our actions, all the things that we say, and all the things that we have in the mind have consequences. And so, of course, I've been talking about how being generous kind of has some uplift in the heart, maybe some delight in the mind. But also, we are often generous, not always, but we are often generous when we have a feeling of abundance, when we have a feeling of, I have enough, a little bit of wealth, and here, let me share and let me give this. Sometimes we're generous when that isn't our predominant feeling, but often this feeling of having a certain type of wealth is underlying this feeling of generosity. What's really interesting, and we find with practice that so often that if there's a relationship where this feeling of abundance leads to generosity, it works in the opposite way too. When we're generous, in that moment, we feel a certain type of wealth, a certain absence of a lack. We're like, there's enough. I have enough. There is enough in that moment. If there isn't enough, then maybe if you don't have that feeling when you're being generous or sharing, maybe it's an opportunity to examine your generosity. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But first, I wanted to point out that the Buddha did talk about generosity a lot. Very often, or classically, certainly here in the Vipassana scene, we talk about the path of practice towards greater and greater freedom to be with this movement. We use these three categories: sila, samadhi, panya, ethical behavior, mental development, and wisdom. That's one way we could translate that. But there's another path of practice. There's another three ways of practicing, and it starts with generosity, dana. Then it goes to sila, and then bhavana. So for the first step of generosity is that Buddha recognized for some people that's where they start. Not with a meditation practice, not with a practice with ethics, but to start with this movement of giving in a way that makes sense for them and is appropriate for them, in a way that enables them to maybe broaden their area of concern, or in a way to consider like what might be helpful for others or what might be beneficial for others, not only for themselves. So to undermine some of the self-centeredness or obsession we sometimes have with getting more, right? We're certainly encouraged to acquire and attain. And so this can be quite a practice, just to start with this kind of like letting go, the opposite of acquiring, instead sharing and being non-stingy. So the Buddha would start by talking about the importance and benefits of practicing generosity, with this recognition that it can take some practice, and this is a fantastic place to start. It's just with this movement of softening anything that we're doing. And then, based on this foundation, he talked about the importance and benefits of the practice of ethics. Because one of the greatest gifts we can give to others is this gift of fearlessness, the gift of feeling safe around us, knowing that we're not going to harm them because we have a commitment to behaving ethically, because we have a commitment to behaving in a way that's wholesome and helpful and healthy. So we can give to others the freedom from fear, freedom from feelings of hostility, or freedom from oppression by the way that we behave. Classically, this is with the 5 precepts, so giving up, killing, stealing, false speech, sexual misconduct, and intoxicants. By abstaining from those, we're able to give the gift of safety to others. And we shouldn't underestimate how powerful this can be. I remember that when I was early in my practice, there was somebody that I would spend time with who was further along the path than I was, had been practicing for much longer than me. And I noticed that I didn't notice this at first, but when I heard this idea, given this gift of fearlessness, I started to reflect, where do I feel the most safe in my life? And I discovered that it was with practitioners who had undertaken this practice of the behaving ethically. This had a big impact on me, for it allowed me to relax and to open up and to really touch into the experience of just being present, knowing that I didn't have to protect myself. That allowed my practice to go deeper as I kind of recognized, yes, there are others out there that are trustworthy. So we shouldn't underestimate how powerful, of course, behaving ethically benefits ourselves, but can benefit others. So the Buddha taught Dharma, generosity, sila, ethics, and bhavana. Bhavana means cultivating or developing, and usually we talk about it as developing the mind, and in this context, developing their mental inner states. So in some ways, we could talk about the practice of calming and quieting the mind, so that we might begin to see, we might begin to notice, and we might begin to feel all the ways in which we are not letting go. What does it feel like to be holding on so tightly to whether it's an idea or it's an actual object or whatever it might be, an experience? So as we calm and quiet the mind, we start to feel the suffering that's associated with holding tightly. And we might feel that this pinch maybe of stinginess or tightly grasping. And also, bhavana with mental development, we might have some insights too, as the mind calms down and we can see some more. There might be some insights, a number of them, and one we can point to here is this idea of ownership is a useful social construct, but we don't really own things in the way that we think we do. That is, things aren't inherently mine or inherently yours. They just are what they are. Your car would be just as happy if somebody else started to drive it, right? If you sell your car, it's no longer yours. It's the same car, but it's somebody else's responsibility. Or so we may be like stewards of objects, but we don't own them. They aren't mine in the way that we think that we have complete control over them, or some kind of way. So as the mind starts to quiet and we start to feel the pinch of stinginess, we also start to see that this activity of making things me, owning this experience, or making objects mine, kind of like owning that object, isn't what we initially think it is, or what we might think it is at first blush or at first examination. And of course, these insights supported by a calm and stable mind lead to deeper and deeper levels of freedom, all the way to complete awakening. But all the way also to just some general increase in a sense of well-being, a sense of happiness, as we stop trying to own everything and trying to make these objects behave in a way that we want them to, or not change and not go away or protect them or something like this. To be sure, we should protect those things for which we are stewards, our belongings. I'm not saying to give away everything, but it's really quite something to just examine this idea of ownership. this idea. And recognize that it is a belief, and it's a very useful one, and it's a social convention that we've all bought into, so it has value. But it can be useful to get a little bit curious about it. What is that experience like? And then, of course, once a person is awakened, they continue to be generous. They are generous with service, by supporting others in the practice, or supporting others in whatever way seems like the right thing to do with wisdom. It might be a story in Gil's book, A Monastery Within, I'm not sure, but I remember either hearing or reading a story that was meaningful for me, and that was this idea that, this question of, how can you tell who are those individuals who have the most freedom or who are awakened? And the answer was those who are serving others, those who are helping others, who are like giving of their resources or time or energy. So in this way, generosity, this letting go, this giving, is cyclic and is throughout the whole path of practice. Dana, sila, bhavana, and then after awakening, there's not only helping in whatever way is appropriate, but also this idea that to give the gift of the teachings of the Dharma, to support others in their practice, to support others in their understanding of the Dharma. Not that we have to go out and be evangelical, but I think all of us that have the opportunity to talk about the Dharma with others recognize that it's really supportive to explore Dharma concepts or meditation experience, or explore our questions, our doubts, the things we're confused about, the things that we are not confused about. It really makes a difference to share and to, not only that we support others, but that we feel supported too. So, generosity, of course, not unlike loving kindness or compassion, is something that we can practice and that we can gain greater facility and strength with. It might be that from your cultural background, your family background, social background, whatever background you have, that maybe being generous isn't so easy. Maybe that's not the way that comes naturally or only comes with a certain amount of effort. That's okay. That's okay. We all start where we are, and we can practice. We can practice with this act of being generous. It's recognizing that it's an expression of non-stinginess, but also non-greed. So each time we are generous, that movement of the heart, that movement of the mind is strengthened. So whether it's letting the person in traffic go in front of you, or whether it's really making sure with social distancing and mask wearing that people feel safe, having that as a kind of a generous gesture. Or maybe it's just being generous with our attention. When we're with somebody, we're listening to them or being with them, that we're not holding back, we're just fully with them. Or maybe it's being generous with certainly money, like donations, but also with skills that we have. Anytime, whether it's a small movement or a large movement, a small gesture or a big gesture, can really support this practice or this experience of generosity. It's easy to romanticize this idea of generosity. We're having this feeling that it should always be perfectly delightful and easy, but there might be some times in which there is a little bit of discomfort or a little bit of like a hesitation. And that's an invitation to just examine. What is this hesitation about? And it might become clear, like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be generous here. This hesitation is telling me that I'm giving away something that actually I'm going to start resenting that I gave it away. Or something that's precious to me, and then I'm just going to feel the great sense of lack. So if we feel some of that uncomfortableness, that's just an invitation to gain some better self-understanding, to do some examination, to give some spaciousness to ourselves so that we can explore and see what that's about. And maybe we aren't acting generously. So we can differentiate between what we might call right giving and wrong giving. Right generosity, wrong generosity. So wrong generosity is if we're giving because we have some moralistic sense of should. I should donate, I should give. Right? We want to be cultivating this openness of heart, this activity of letting go. And the sense of should is kind of a tight and collapsed feeling. That's the opposite of cultivating a wholesome, open-hearted experience. And if the sense of giving is accompanied by resentment or anger, that's also not the direction we want to go. Instead, what if there's some delight or some happiness or spaciousness with the giving? And then some recognition that this is a practice, so we stretch ourselves a little bit. Not so much that it feels really uncomfortable, but enough that our generosity can grow. This letting go can grow and can support us in so many ways. So, when we are discerning kind of like right or wrong generosity, there's some questions we can ask ourselves to help us discern this and have some wisdom in the way that we are generous. One question is, how does it feel? How does it feel in the body? How does it feel in the mind? Is there a sense of openness, or is there a sense of collapsing and shutting down? Is there a sense of fear? Is there a feeling of depletion or anger or confusion or contraction? If so, take some more time. Maybe you aren't generous right there, but take that as an opportunity to learn something. Another question are, what stories or beliefs are underneath my giving? Do I have this idea that if I give this, then I'm going to get this in return, so that it's some type of transactional activity, or if I give this, then everybody's going to think that I'm such a generous person, or we want to be seen a particular way, or what are the beliefs or ideas that are underneath, and can we go underneath them? Can we recognize when they are there? And maybe find the impulse of generosity that's underneath them. And just feel into, is this, if I'm going to be generous, does this support some openness and delight or not? And then one thing that maybe I'll end here is what last question we could ask ourselves is what I'm giving appropriate? Are we giving lots of bread to somebody who's gluten intolerant? I just made up this expression, but this idea of to just be aware of the context, and is what we're giving or offering what's needed and useful and beneficial, or will it be burdensome for whomever receives it? Are we giving because we want to get rid of it, or are we giving so it might support somebody else? So coming back to this idea of, with the fires and with all the difficulties, we do what we can. And in some ways that might mean to be generous. And to recognize that generosity is this idea of letting go, and letting go is integral to the entire path of practice in Buddhism. And just very simply, letting go just brings greater happiness and greater well-being. Not to mention the way that we might support others with our generosity. So, may your generosity bring you delight and support, and may you experience the benefits of other people's generosity. So in this way there can be this field of generosity in which the Dharma can freely flow for the benefit of all beings everywhere. Thank you.